President Bola Tinubu on Wednesday unveiled the portfolios of his new ministers, appointed our former governors of Rivers State, Wike, as the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, FCT, and Senator Dave Umahi as the Minister of Works. This is just as the Ministry of Niger Delta Affairs appears to have been scrapped, as it was not on the ministerial list, while there is no one for now as the Senior Minister of Petroleum. We're now joined by the former SA to Rivers State Governor, Inkotaria, and political analyst Chris Nwokobia to discuss this listing. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. I'm a little bit worried. Can you hear me?
Yes, Inko, we can hear you loud and clear. All right.
Very good. Thank you.
Chris Nwokobia will be joining us via the phone. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us as well. I think I'll begin with Inkotaria. Inko, you've seen the list. You've seen the nominations. Before we start to go into particular portfolios, let's talk about your general sense of the list that has been reviewed. We don't have a complete list yet of all the portfolios, but for the ones that have been released, would you say that you're impressed? President Bola Tinubu has been charged with having a keen eye for making great selections. So from what you've seen, would you say that this has indeed been great selections?
Well, save for one or two appointments, I think we are going to have square pegs and square holes. If you look at the likes of Dave Umahi, his records in Ebonyi State, Nyesom Wike, his records in Rivers State, and especially the deplorable state, pathetic state of the Federal Capital Territory. I think these are some. Then you look at the Education Minister. But my greatest worry has to do with the scrapping of the Niger Delta Ministry. And the obviously Bola Tinubu is going to become the substantive minister for petroleum. These are the two major worries I have. But I've always said that you don't need the Niger Delta Ministry and at the same time, Niger Delta Development Commission. It's just complete waste of our resources and a repetition. What they need to do, even if the ministry has been scrapped, no problem, although a lot of us would have preferred the Niger Delta Ministry to the Niger Delta Development Commission, so that it will give a sense of belonging to the Niger Delta people. But you don't need both, actually, because they are performing the same function. That is the truth about it. So I don't have a problem with the appointment thus far. Let us see how a lot of them will perform. Although, again, some persons, like I said, most, but you still have some persons with whose records are very solid and who ought not to be in the federal cabinet. But you know, these are compensatory appointments. So probably after a year, and most times these appointments are based on the fear of a rerun. So the Supreme Court nullify the election. So you need certain hands that you're sure can deliver the state to you. But I think after a year or two, we are going to get the real appointments, those I believe Tinubu really want to work with if he succeeds in the next 4 years.
Okobia, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. All right. So I want your thoughts also. Mr. Inkotaria said that, to a large extent, there are square pegs and square holes. Do you agree with, that picture that has been painted? A lot of these persons seem to be settlements, for the efforts that they, and of course, what they did to get the APC to win the election and get President Bola Tinubu to win the election. Some of them, of course, are journalists that have now been made ministers for, things that have nothing to do with journalism. Some of them have been made ministers for defense or minister of state for defense after their states were ravaged by bandits for many, many years. Some of them have absolutely no business. I mean, a lot of them really. If you look at their educational qualifications and their, work or job, political history, have no business whatsoever with the places that they've been appointed to. Let me just quickly share one of them. The Minister of Solid Minerals, Dele Alake, used to be a journalist and, of course, a technocrat. And former Commissioner for Information and Strategy in Lagos State. Boyega Oyetola, who's the former governor of Osun State, and lost his re-election. I should mention that, lost his re-election to Governor Adeleke currently, and what lost his election means that the people of Osun State weren't even pleased with the work that he did in Osun State. He's now Minister for Transportation. Mohammed Badiru is former governor of Jigawa State and, of course, Minister for Defense. Bola Tinubu, former governor of Zamfara, now Minister of State for Defense. Festus Keyamo, SAN, is now Minister of Aviation. So, Mr. Okobia, please, let's have your thoughts, of these square pegs and square holes.
Thank you once again for having me. Let me say clearly that I would align with the later part of my brother's comment, which of course was stating clearly that it is more of political patronage rather than about propriety, rather than about the right people in the right place for the right job. I say this advisedly. If you look at the list like you have just clearly enumerated, you will find out that it's basically more about partisanship, political patronage, and if you like, maybe the president waiting or preparing for a possible rerun or a runoff. That's actually what it is. It's not about square pegs and square holes. You have just noted where's Dela Alaka and what is he doing there? What is he doing in the Ministry of Mines or so? And the other, Badr, what did he do in the state? And how can you put Matawale in charge of in the Ministry of Defense when in actual fact he superintended over a state that was basically defenseless? And I want to say with all sense of respect and commitment to our country that until leadership puts country first, until leadership puts service delivery first, our search for the new republic will be distant and it will be like the wait for Godot. I would say very importantly that going forward, the Tinubu administration must be ready for critical analysis, critical survey, critical X-ray of its purpose and intendment for our country. Don't forget also that, like you noted, we have governors who failed in their effort for re-election, and what the federal cabinet appointments that they were given was just basically compensatory for helping get Asiwaju to power through the most fraudulent, and I say with all sense of respect, the most fraudulent electoral process in our country's history.
All right, Mr. Okobia, also looking through the list, I mean, we've talked about some of the shocking announcements, the ones that we've maybe considered square pegs in round holes. Would you say, if you look through the list, which ones would you say you find the most comforting or the most exciting for you? Which of the names and portfolios do you find very fitting? Mr. Okobia, do we still have you online?
Hear me?
All right, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Please go ahead.
If you have square pegs and round holes, it will give you worry, not excitement. We just mentioned Dela Alaka's position, and then we talked about Badaru and Matawali. Then we talked about the issue of the man. I don't even know about the man in charge of education. I don't even know his history and his story. You know, there are a few exciting. The man in charge of health, Party, is a globally acclaimed performer in the healthcare sector. That's fantastic. I don't know the woman in charge of women affairs. I thought they were going to put Betty Edu or put her in the health industry. I don't know why it's a health ministry. I don't know why she's in humanitarian affairs and all that. And very worrying is, but worrisome is the appointment of Boyega Ayatollah. I can't remember any strides in the area of transportation whilst he was governor of Osun State for 4 years. So I think that largely what we have is compensatory appointments and designations for political purposes. They're saying, oh, thank you for working for us. We may have lost the election in your state, but you did the best you can. For those who helped him through the electoral process, like Wike in Rivers, albeit with all sense of criticism, Querulos, albeit, of course, we know what happened in Rivers State. Maybe they're saying thank you for what you did for us in River State. So to pretend over FCT, because as it were, we couldn't win 25% of FCT, and if there's going to be a rerun, maybe you replicate what you did in River State in the FCT. But it's going to be difficult for all of them because Nigerians are looking beyond partisanship. Nigerians want a country that works. We're looking at patriotism over partisanship. So this ministerialist largely does not inspire hope and faith.
Well, the people have also celebrated the appointment of Wale Edun as the Minister of Finance. I think that's one name that has been spoken about. The Humanitarian Affairs Ministry, of course, in the past had, I hope I remember her name, but of course that also came with a lot of criticism, with the hundreds of billions of naira that were allegedly spent on the school feeding program during COVID-19 and all of that. It's still a conversation that needs to be looked into. But I'm going to go back to Inko-Tariah now, and I want your thoughts on so the appointment of people into these positions. Are we at a stage where we can say it doesn't really matter their educational or professional backgrounds, as long as they have an eye for leadership and governance, that it's fair enough that you can put them in these positions, scatter them around, and they would figure out a way around it? And also we would like you to speak on Festus Keyamo, who is going to be heading aviation. The minister, he was a former Minister of State for Labor, I think. I don't know if he had a great record there to now be handling aviation, but go ahead, please.
Education is a sine qua non in the kind of appointment you get. You cannot be half-baked and become a minister, even though it's administrative, but you can't be half-baked because you must have some basic knowledge, basic education, minimum, to be able to assimilate, understand processes and procedures, and also implementation. So you can't take that away. It's a prerequisite when you talk of educational qualification. Then secondly, Festus Keyamo, first and foremost, shouldn't even be a minister. You all remember the fraud in terms of appointment or employment and what happened between Festus Keyamo and the National Assembly. And up to date, no account has been given. So I don't think Festus Keyamo should even be a minister. Rather, he should be somewhere in jail. That is the truth about it. Now, but remember what is his name again? The former APC National Chair, Adams Oshomole, who said, once you come into APC, your sins are forgiven. And that is why you have a lot of them there in APC. Probably their sins have been forgiven. But this is not APC's money. We are talking of the federal force. So whoever has transgressed or whoever is guilty of financial fraud should not be insulated because you're a member of a political party. That is wrong. So when they talk of Festus Keyamo, he should not. We're not even talking of the ministry right now that he has been assigned to, but he should not even be a member of the Federal Executive Council. Rather, he should be facing prosecution by the federal government. But like I rightly said in the beginning of my statement, I said to you, I said these are compensatory appointments. And I strongly believe, I have that settled conviction that maybe after a year or two, most of them will drop, most. One person that probably will almost, because we're on national TV, so I don't want to use a particular word, but one person I believe will want to ingratiate himself with the powers that be so that he could remain there is probably the former governor of River State. Because when you even look at the escalation, how he criticized the APC, how he criticized Bola Tinubu and all the things he said, you realize that I don't think he has been properly forgiven, notwithstanding that he was an instrument in rigging the elections in River State, notwithstanding that. Because River State, I supported Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, but I can tell you authoritatively that in River State, the man who won was P2B, even in Wike's ward. The man who won was P2B. So he had to be compensated. And these are the same man who said he was never going to accept the office of a vice president, not to talk of a minister. APC is stage 4 cancer, this is malaria and so on. But these are the kind of characters you have in government. And unfortunately, I must tell you that these are the kind of characters that excel in government. Persons whose lips drip with words of nullification and interposition in one breath, embodiments of contradiction, in one breath they tell you another in another breath. But like in the case in Nigeria, even the Bola Tinubu is even like that. He's not different. That's the truth about it. He's not different. So on the issue of Festus Keyamo, he is not supposed to be a member of the Federal Capital, or member of the Federal Executive Council. He should rather be found in one of the detention centers facing prosecution. So it does not, even if they had assigned him to a Ministry of Justice, he ought not to be. Yes, he's a senior advocate of Nigeria. But when you consider the sleaze, when you consider his repulsive actions in the past, and the burning question, the nagging question that is yet to be answered by him, he did not even explain on the day he was being cleared. He did not even explain what happened. Yes, he apologized. He had to apologize because he needed the appointment. But he did not even explain to Nigerians, okay, I'm sorry, but this was what really happened. Even if it's a summary of what happened, he did it. He evaded it completely. And that is the end of it. So a man like Festus should never, ever be given any appointment whatsoever.
All right, very interesting analysis there. Let's talk about, the balance. Do you feel, looking at the list right now, you've said that a number of them would drop over time in the next year or two, but let's work with what we have right now. The announcements and the portfolios we're organized in a number of ways according to different geopolitical zones. Do you think that this list so far is balanced, or do you think that there might be conversations much later as to maybe not having enough representation from certain geopolitical zones?
No, definitely the list is not balanced. Everybody sees of that fact, that the list is not balanced. And if they are going to, the other geopolitical zones are going to be considered, well, that is the prerogative of Mr. President. I don't really know. You have a president that is not really interested in either the rule of law, he's not interested in the feelings of Nigerians. He does what he likes. So one cannot sit down here to say, oh, they might be considered in the future. That is just an imagination. It's a guess or it's a conjecture. You can't say authoritatively, because you have a Tinubu who is not bothered. You can go to hell, pardon my language, who is not bothered about how you feel, or he is how would I put it? Negativistic. Do what you want to do, and I'll do what I want to do. And so, if you talk of considering these other geopolitical zones in the future, I can't tell you. I can't tell you, but I have my doubts. I sincerely have my doubts if he's going to do that. Where a lot of people criticized the president being the substantive ministers, which is also a transgression of our laws, actually. But he's still going to be the substantive minister. Rather, what they did was to split the ministry. You had minister for state gas, minister for state whatever, and so on. And definitely is going to be the substantive minister. So they are not bothered about how you feel or whose ox is God. They just go ahead and do whatever they want to do. And if it succeeds, fine. If it doesn't succeed, fine. And most cases, their successes are serendipitous. That is, it just happens, not that they are planned. In most cases, I'm talking of Buhari and I'm talking of Bola Tinubu from what we have seen so far.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Wokobi, I'm going to bring you back in. I try to, point out a couple of the, pretty important ministries. Of course, solid minerals is where Dele Aleke will be heading. But of course, Adedayo Adelabu is the Minister for Power. He used to be a banker, and then, of course, played a, seemingly major role in the CBN before, of course, getting, further into politics and now, this ministerial appointment. But of course, it doesn't seem like he has a lot of experience with regards handling electricity or power generation in any way, capacity. That's just another example. I also, want you to speak on, if you remember in 2015, Nigerians waited for quite a while before former President Muhammadu Buhari appointed his ministers. It eventually came with, a lot of people felt disappointed when the list was eventually put together. But that set the tone for what the next 4 to 8 years was like with former President Muhammadu Buhari. Do you think we're seeing pretty much the same thing now, that the tone has been set as to where Nigeria will be going in the next 4 or maybe 8 years? And, should Nigerians at this point, be excited and hopeful that, we're moving in the right direction, bearing in mind the state that the country has been in the last 8 years, that everyone agreed that it needed a miracle. Has this set the tone for the next 4 years or 8 years?
Let me say very clearly that what is happening today brings to mind that popular French cliché that the more things change, the more they appear to remain the same. Sadly, we're faced at that point in our historicity where leadership has lost every commitment to delivering on the promises that they make every election season. It's a sad trajectory. You just pointed out, I don't know whether the man from Oyo State who was given the power sector is an energy banker or did jobs in that line. But at this point, we're in the 21st century, we barely have power. What we should have in that ministry is a technocrat who understands that sector. I salute what you're doing this morning, which is obviously a very critical analysis of what obtains in our country and what we must do going forward. There is no excitement in the horizon. Let me use their campaign cliche. It doesn't even look like it's a precursor to renewed hope. It doesn't even look like there's a pointer to renewed hope. For several reasons we have in the course of this interview adumbrated. My brother from Rivers State has said something very clearly, that this is not the kind of cabinet that should last more than 2 years. I don't even think that this is a cabinet that can take us out of the morass, to promise, because it is extremely, extremely partisan, compensatory. And then my sister in the studio, who asked a very important question about balance, raised a very fundamental issue, both constitutionally and otherwise. But as somebody from the Niger Delta, I'm from Delta State, I want to say that you feed Nigeria, you will run these ministries from wealth from the Niger Delta. You would sustain them from wealth largely from the Niger Delta. And Ministry of the Niger Delta, which should be one of the prime ministries, does not have a minister yet. Nobody mentioned anything about it. That tells you how careless about what obtains, and the sentiment and the tendencies and sensibilities of our people in the Niger Delta. This administration does not, they don't care. That's the word. They really don't care. But interestingly, the days and the months ahead will tell where we're headed as a people, because this appointment will be subjected to intellectual forensic, political forensic, and Nigerians will ask very strong questions. Again, let me say very importantly that going forward, those who even allude that Wale Edu's appointment was one of the most exciting, forget that, and I say this clearly without fear of critique, that Lagos can run on autopilot. Lagos is about the most economically viable on account of population and on account of the fact that at some point it was a federal capital territory. Lagos, just about any average mind can run the economy of Lagos. And I'm not joking about this. Subjected to forensic, you'll find out what I'm saying.
Right.
So to tell me that because he managed the finances of Lagos, where largely Lagosians are taxed, tell me what works in Lagos. Please, let me land on this, please. It's very important, so that our children can learn to think. But Guillemot said in 1990, that his crime was to have taught the young to think, so that we can subject some of these things to extensive forensics. On what does Lagos survive but taxes? How do they build the economy of Lagos? Is this a precursor to the fact that Nigerians are going to be taxed heavily so that this government can sustain its flamboyancy? This is the largest cabinet we're about to have. And you don't have square pegs and square holes. You're telling me because he did something in Lagos? No, come on. You don't give me 2 million to furnish a bedroom and I make it look right. And then you tell me, oh, he has done so well. No.
Right.
The time to subject everything that happens to us as citizens and to in our government.
Mr. Okobia, unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we might need to wrap up the conversation here. And I agree with you that there are lots of questions that need answers. These ones that you have raised, What about the Niger Delta? You know, what's happening? Is it because of the existence of NDDC? Why was the omission made? And is there a reason for it? And will there be remedies for it? So many questions, including questions about the provisions of ministers of state. Is that something we should still be having in 2023?
And who will be the Minister for Petroleum?
Oh, it seems that he might have reserved it for himself, just like his predecessor. But these are conversations that we hope we can explore even further with you. We'd like to have you join us again. Thank you so much, Chris Mokobi and Inko Taria. We hope that you can join us again to dig deeper into this conversation. I'm sure that the next time we have you, we'll have more information that has, you come out and we'll be able to dissect it even further. Thank you for your time with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good morning.